This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Today is Thursday, September 22nd. It is 6:08 p.m. and this is the Affordable and Fair Housing Partnership. Does anyone want to take notes? Jamie? Okay. I'm writing that down because usually later I'm like, who took the notes?
Who's taking that?
Jamie. All right, so I do have a couple extra, or one extra agenda and the town lodging memo, if anyone wants it. We need to approve the June and August meeting notes.
We didn't need it.
We did, didn't we? I sent notes. Yes, we met on August 4th. We did not meet at the end of August. We met at the beginning of August, which I don't have those notes in front of me, actually. Maybe I should open my computer. But we couldn't open your notes that you just sent.
Because of the pages thing.
Kyan has converted and resent them. So, and I resent a screenshot of them because I couldn't convert it.
I'm sorry about that.
Well, what's weird is you did save it as a doc, but it kept the pages attachment, file extension.
I had saved it that way before, but because I revised them, it reverted back.
Oh, okay.
I think. Sorry.
But I had also circulated June notes, so I had made the corrections and circulated them with the original meeting notice. So now we have two sets of June meeting notes to look at and decide what to do with. Let me just see if my Wi-Fi's connected.
Because there were some of it had been corrected, because the comments were Jamie's. So some of it had been corrected, but some of it hadn't been. When I opened
Oh,
it up,
so
I was
you-
confused.
So you corrected my version?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the one that says revised. And the one that I think Kyan just resent,
Okay.
converted and resent. I'm really sorry. It's just
No,
my,
sorry.
It's not my forte. Computers.
City guest, does it still say in school?
Yes.
Lowercase?
Yeah, I believe so.
All right, so does you can see the revised notes, Shira?
Yes. Yes.
So the one thing that I had changed on my version was the part about the Easthampton Rental Assistance Program, because the notes were not 100% accurate.
My original notes.
The June notes?
These are the June notes.
So we met in June, not in July, and then in early August. I thought
August.
that had to be canceled.
We met on August 4th, but we did not have a quorum.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
So what I see in the June notes that Jana sent an email about, what did you say, the rental assistance program?
Yeah, so the rental assistance program I had corrected in the notes that I had sent out.
Touch that part.
Right. I didn't notice that until I looked at it previously. Maybe we might have to.
According to Jana, Easthampton's emergency rental assistance program will end as of June 30. We discussed that Community Action Pioneer Valley could apply directly to CPA for additional funds for homelessness prevention in the future.
So that number 4 needs to be inserted into Kate's revised version that she just sent,
Okay.
I think. Does that make sense?
Do we want to table this?
We might want to table it and revise them again
Yeah.
for next meeting. So let's do that. And I just completely screwed up my computer. I don't know what's happening. All right, so I will you and I will work together to get them.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, I will do that.
Did any
So, would Kate's notes just say, just have the typo, right? I mean, we know we need to fix it, but it says June 30, 2000.
I'm concerned about because I changed that.
Why don't we?
Yeah, sorry, my fault. We're tabling.
We're
All right,
Tabling.
Kate and Jana will figure it out
I
and
do
bring them
not
back
approve of
in
his
October.
notes.
Okay.
Can we take a vote so I can say nay for the first time? Sorry. It's been a really long week.
It's June. All right, what about August?
In August, we could not approve the June meeting notes, and we tabled them. It literally says tabled. Yeah.
Kayam, do you have any comments on the August meeting notes?
No, they look good to me.
All right, Shira, let us know when you're ready do you need to review them anymore?
No, no, sorry, I'm good.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve the August meeting minutes?
Motion to approve.
All those in favor? Oh, no, I have to do a roll call. Shira,
Aye.
Kate, Kayam,
Aye.
and I'm Jana, aye. Great. August meeting notes are approved, and I will send them to Barbara. This is not on the agenda, but Jackie has resigned from the Housing Partnership. Which is not a huge surprise because she's been on it for a really, really long time and probably has other things she would like to do besides this. So that brings us down to technically 5 because Kate Shapiro is still a member, though she does not come. So it does mean that we need 3 of us to have a quorum. And we probably should start thinking about recruitment.
What happened to Zach?
Zach had to move out of Easthampton because he could not find an affordable apartment, and as a result had to resign from the housing partnership.
I didn't know
Now
that was why I
that
moved,
should
but.
be in the public ear.
Well,
Tell that to, yeah.
so yeah, he had to find another apartment, and it was outside the city,
Oh.
which is a bummer because he was great.
Yeah.
So we should think about recruiting. I still have the list of folks who were interested and who came to the Housing Coalition meetings that I could send it out to. It'd be good to tap people who are different from the folks on the Housing Coalition so that we don't have too much overlap because that becomes a quorum problem for us anyway. But if you know other people that might be interested, please feel free to encourage them to apply because the application is available on the city website. So we've had a good run where we had almost a full 9 members, but
And we're all new. The 3
Correct.
of us are really new.
you are, which is great. New people are good. But yeah, so be thinking if there's other folks you think might be good, or you might want to recruit. And we'll do the same. All right, school reuse RFR. Yay!
Yay.
Was approved last night at City Council. I think we were all there, or at least, yeah, we were all there. And even though it had a weird beginning, it seemed to be actually not that hard. I mean, like, they all voted for it. And there wasn't even a lot of, like,
Not pushed back.
It was not contentious.
Was not contentious. There wasn't a lot of dissent. Everybody kind of seemed to like it. So,
It's pretty exciting.
yeah. So
Is there any indication of when it might actually be released?
that's a great question. I assume the planning department and the procurement officer are working on that, and they have to like go right. It has to be advertised somewhere.
It's gonna
Sometime
be,
this fall, you suspect?
Yes, I would think.
I mean, that's what the draft RFP had, was releasing in July and proposals due in October, so.
So I think they have to figure out what the date, like put the dates in. But I think it's a high priority. So I hope that it would go out in the next few weeks. The other things that still need to be worked out are which Emily, the consultant, talked about last night, is the weighted scores. So there's the evaluation criteria, and the property committee saw a draft of like how the scoring might work, but at some point they have to I don't know if that goes back to the full council. I don't really know how that gets decided, but they do have to figure out how the scoring is going to work. They don't have to do that before the RFP goes out. They can do it after the RFP goes out because that stuff's not included in the RFP. So like just trying to figure out like, affordable housing, does that get more points than,
Heaven, Jim.
or like communities, like the generic community space category?
that's not included in the RFP.
The scoring, how the scores are weighted, is not included in the RFP. The list of priorities, like 1 to 8, is included in the RFP. Like affordable housing is 1, but it doesn't say how many points that is. It says if it's advantageous, highly advantageous, or not advantageous. So I think they have to decide like how many points is not advantageous versus how many points is highly advantageous.
And it sounded like advantageous in one category might be worth more points than highly advantageous in a different category.
Right.
Like the top of it would be, worth 5 points, whereas the next one down, maybe the maximum's 4 points or something like that. Is that something that Emily Innes does, or the committee that's forming? Do you know who determines this weighting?
That part wasn't clear to me. Only that it has to be decided before before they evaluate the proposals. I would hope it doesn't go back to property committee, but I don't know where it goes.
Technically, the city council's releasing the RFP,
So it might be go back to city council.
right? I mean, that's the. I wasn't there for the votes. I don't know if the vote authorized the mayor to form a committee, like a review committee, or if it's
It
the
was
council.
not clear. It didn't-
They did not vote on that. They voted to surplus the buildings. There were 3 or 4 votes, right? It was like they surplus the buildings, release the mayor can release the RFP, approve the RFP in its form, but it did not talk about the creation of the evaluation committee yet.
But I think, my understanding was that it was taken permanently out of the property committee.
I think that it's true, yeah.
Meaning like you've done your job, now let's moving, the train is moving.
Right.
But I mean, the evaluations would go back. If city council were the group that was receiving these proposals, they would send it to one of their subcommittees or form an ad hoc committee to review it.
Yeah, I think they're planning, my understanding is it's going to be an ad hoc committee.
An ad hoc city council committee, so a separate subcommittee of the city council?
Not with city council, not with other people in addition to city council.
So the city council releases the RFP, or the mayor, they voted to allow the mayor to release the RFP. There seems to be some committee that will be formed to review proposals, but then they will make a recommendation to city council based on those proposals, and then council still has to vote on the acceptance of that proposal.
Yes.
Right, that's my understanding.
Yes, that's my understanding also. So there's still a lot to do, and we still have to get proposals. So that is sort of most important part. Kyan, did you have anything else to add? Did we miss anything?
No, I think you covered everything. Yeah, the only question mark there is how the weighting criteria gets decided, or how the weighting actual scores get decided.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Well, congrats everybody, because in the beginning I thought this was going to be like a slam dunk, and then it clearly was not a slam dunk. And so I thought last night went much smoother than I was expecting more, let's keep the gym, oh, poor basketball. Like, I was waiting for more comments about that, but.
And there were a lot of community comments just in general.
Yeah. And I would say, I'm trying to think back, but I feel like we were about 50-50 split of like people like us who said, woohoo, and other people who were kind of like, well, what about this? But I feel like it was pretty even, whereas in past experiences it has not been even. There's been a lot more, well, what about this? And so I did know that there was that question about school children and taxes and emergency services related to affordable housing, so that's just a good thing to remember. That's going to come back around when these go for permitting, that those are the questions we always get. Like, there's going to be more, how are we going to pay for all these people that are living in these apartments and cost us all this money?
Or yes.
Well, they did bring that up, yes. Because they're in a 40R district, so the state will actually pay the city for the affordable units.
If whoever develops it goes through the 40R process.
But those, to me, those questions are like veiled.
These people are going to ruin our town.
Yeah, like, I mean, borderline, in my opinion, kind of racist comments. Like, they don't ask about, if it was a market rate subdivision, no one's saying who's going to pay for all these emergency services, so.
Exactly.
I'll also just say it was the same person who had just said, thank you for buying us Teslas for the police department. So I was like, that's a little bit yeah, it's very blatant, veiled language.
Yeah. Which we'll hear more of. So just good reminders that we will need more tools, more responses to that. But
Yeah, definitely.
If I could just add one thing that I think the city needs to think about, if they're really hung up on keeping community space as part of this, is how the management of that space will work. And that developers who build affordable housing are there to manage affordable housing. They're not there to manage gyms, and they're not there to manage spaces.
Auditoriums?
Auditoriums. That is not what they are in the
Cafeterias?
business to do. Cafeterias. So the city will need to seriously think about, and when the RFP comes out and, they have a site visit and they're fielding questions, I anticipate that will be one of the that will be one of the questions that most developers are going to want to know, is how that's going to work. And if the city is prepared to manage these spaces.
right.
Because it's not the developer's job to do that.
One thought, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
One thought I had was just if we could, as a talking point or as a response, to think about all of the different community spaces that currently exist in Easthampton that are for performance space, for physical activities, auditoriums, open spaces, rail trail, all of that, to try to paint a picture of, look at all this stuff that we already have versus framing it like there are all these unmet needs for community space.
It's true.
So I don't know that there are. I don't know. As compared to other needs.
One thing that did change in the draft from the property committee, Jess, is that if the developer says, yes, I will retain retain the gym, for example, they need to provide to the city the number of affordable housing units that would exist without the gym. So what's the city losing in affordable units by retaining the gym? And then also provide to the city, what would the city need to do to maintain the gym? So like, yes, we'll retain the gym, but it's costing you 3 affordable units, for say, and it's gonna cost you $50,000 a year because we're not going like to rent it or pay, like whatever it is. So they did add that into the RFP so that the council can weigh that information, like what's more important and like what's it going to cost the city, or whoever is who's going to pay to be able to use that space. So I think hopefully that will give some good information to the council so they'll be able to like balance out like what's the priority.
I'm just, what is the attachment to the gym? I no, seriously, like I've not.
Kate asked that exact question
Is it the committee?
to the committee.
You did?
Yeah,
So
because
what
I
was
don't,
the
I
answer?
don't,
Because
my
I'm
memory
They
curious.
didn't really
is
answer
that
it.
in that building, my daughter went to Maple, but we were there a lot because Maple doesn't have a gym. They have a cafeteria that is everything. And, or they did. But it's not I don't perceive it as a great space. I'm surprised that it's become
So beloved.
My
My understanding is that there's some basketball program that's run out of that gym
Yes.
that can't be run anywhere else. Is that?
They didn't say that when pressed about that. So the EBA uses it for basketball. And what John Mason said at the property committee was that like Parks and Rec never wants to lose a space and never wants to lose a gym. But they're not going to take the whole building. Parks and Rec can't manage the whole building. And then I think somebody else said something like, it just means that they will have to use Mountain View School all day.
And
there's a gym at the high school.
Instead of just half the day.
Right.
So they-
Guys, so there's gym at the new school.
Yeah, so they would have to use Mountain View School gym like from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
That people play basketball all day long.
Well, like during basketball season, all the different basketball teams, they would probably be there'd be games probably all day long between like the little kids and like the high school kids.
So in the summer, when there's no school?
No, it's just during basketball season. And I don't know if there's like an adult league that uses it. It's not 365 days a year.
Because West Park had an open gym at some point, and they had an open swimming pool at some point.
Well, and with Parks and Rec, we have a swimming pool that's not been used. There are all kinds of resources
Right.
that exist that aren't being used.
We have a public swimming pool that didn't open this year because there weren't enough lifeguards.
Right.
Like, so who was manning the gym,
Well, I think that is,
that's, I think, part of the question from a developer's perspective is we have, like for Valley, we have one property management company that does all of our properties. They deal with our residential tenants. They're not going to manage a gym.
Right.
It's not in their portfolio. That's not what they do. So it's either a partnership with another organization that would be willing, another nonprofit that would be willing to sort of take that space. But from a financial standpoint, construction costs are so high and tax credit is so difficult. You wouldn't be able to use tax credit money to rehab a gym. So where is that money going to come from in a development pro forma to redo that space? It's not going to be coming from the soft debt and the tax credits that we typically access, unless it's sort of half used as a community space and there's some way to, community spaces can qualify, but they have to be for the tenants only.
right.
So if it's some sort of space that's got, accessible to the general public, like how does that actually work?
Right.
And I'm not enough of an expert in tax credit finance or affordable housing finance at this point to really tell you, but I think that's from a developer's perspective, that's a bit of a challenge, is figuring out how to even pay for it in terms of rehabbing it.
And really,
Just
is it a big slice of the population that would want to keep it? Like, I've only heard 2 people talk about it, literally. And there may be they may represent many more people, but it's not like it's this, I don't hear it as a big community drumbeat. What do you think?
I've heard pros and, I've heard a lot about the gym since it's been threatened.
Since it's been what?
Since it's been threatened.
Threatened.
I think that there is big need for indoor recreation space. There's probably untapped resources, like people don't go to the schools to try to rent out the schools because it's complicated. The schools always give their teams and sports priorities, and
If
I guess
only we had 3 full, recently redone mills.
yeah, but
Create
that's like
spaces.
the ceiling heights and things like that are important for.
Yeah. I'm just saying there's all these open spaces that are like unrented.
I guess Jess, I was curious if
Yeah.
there is need to renovate the gyms, if they're just being used as recreation space, does that actually, and B, if like a partnership?
If you have to redo mechanicals for the building anyway, if you're changing, I'm thinking of the mechanical systems, the HVAC, all of that stuff, if all of that's being gutted, because the building, if it stays, if the developer decides to keep it and not just put a proposal to demo it completely and give you more units, which I think would be preferable from a developer standpoint, is not keep those buildings at all, and to give you more units. But if the proposal was to keep the buildings, if you're changing all the HVAC systems anyway, why wouldn't you want to do that for the gym space? Unless,
Have you been in the gym there?
I have not.
I think there's something about the HVAC system, like it doesn't serve the gym. Like there's some problem also around the HVAC system and the gym, like it's in a different part of the building,
I would
or
highly recommend that the RFP makes all of this very clear
well,
in terms of what is happening in that space.
I think it includes, there's all, I don't know what there's all those attachments on the school reuse building, the committee website that has all that stuff.
Okay. I don't know. I can go and look at it whenever it's released, but from our perspective, if we're looking at it if we're doing a walkabout looking at the building, we need to understand how those mechanicals work.
Right.
So. Okay.
But luckily they didn't attach like any sort of requirements. So,
Right.
It could just be a non-issue and we just get bids to demolish the buildings.
Just to circle back to your question about what is it about the gym, some of the rumblings I heard were basically we have an unmet need for indoor community space, and we have an unused indoor community space. And some of the people, like that nice man next to me, and some of the people behind me, and other rumblings I've heard along the way have been along the lines of we have this gym, why don't we use this gym? Why destroy it? So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But for the duration of I think you brought this up, for the duration of this process, that gym is not going to be usable, right? Like right now, it's not, like for this basketball season.
I would think that they're not going to be able to use it. And definitely once it changes hands to a developer, which the city wants to do as soon as possible, so they're not a developer is not going to overtake Pepin and then let people use the gym.
My understanding is that
It's just that there's going to have to be a plan anyway.
There's going to have to be a plan anyway of where they're going to do basketball.
There's nothing going on in these buildings right now because the city currently is not opening them up on Saturday mornings to let people in and staffing them and doing maintenance on the the buildings are closed, so no one's getting access to these spaces.
And this is going to take a long time. So,
So the people say with the basketball thing, they would have to find another place to play, at least say, for argument's sake, this winter.
I would think,
Winter is,
yeah.
yes, was fine.
Yeah.
The
Winter is
football
coming.
field's been unfunctional for 4 seasons now because of the building of the new school.
Right.
The football team has had no place to play or practice
Oh,
Ours?
Yeah.
Or Eastern? Oh.
for several years while the new school was being built.
So-
They used
I know
Winston,
kids who
didn't
play
they?
football. I know kids who are on the football team, do they just go elsewhere?
I think they practice in Southampton now, there's other locations. So.
All their games are away.
Oh, I forget. It's so sad.
Does Marty still play?
We used to do that when I was on the soccer team in high school. All of our games were away.
My swim team did have meets all away one season because glass broke.
Yeah. All right, let's move along. Unless we have anything else. So we just have to stay tuned on these things, see what happens, keep an eye on it. Keep an eye on the evaluation committee. See what's going to happen with that. So.
Before you move on, can you briefly summarize the $1 transfer thing?
Oh. Which also they didn't decide last night. But so the buildings, this came up during the property committee. So there's an appraisal on the buildings because apparently they had to do an appraisal so that council can vote to dispose of the buildings for less than market value. So the buildings are appraised, like I think JP even said last night, like Pepin's appraised for like $600,000. So my part of my comments was that we need to convey the buildings for $1 because affordable housing developers are not going to spend any amount of money to purchase these buildings that need so much work and are going to be so expensive. So the council has to decide that at some point, like what they're going to convey the buildings for. It seemed like there was mostly agreement that they should be conveyed for $1. But that was why I was talking about that. Because there had been some rumblings at property committee about like, oh, they're worth all this money and why would we just give them away? And Michael Owens, the procurement officer, did a great job basically saying like, they're actually worth nothing. Like nobody wants these buildings. Like they're not worth, it's like I think combined they're worth like $1.5 million or some ridiculous number. So that's the hope, is that that's what they decide to do. And I think there's several counselors that also agree with that, so.
And I think there's pro formas that are required as part of the RFP, and I suspect that anybody who's bidding on this is going to show pro forma that's got a $1 acquisition cost. So.
I would imagine that if someone was trying to develop market rate or luxury stuff, then that's when it has the sale price of $1.2 million for all 3 buildings.
Sure. That's what
Which Dan Rist mentioned.
Yeah, Dan Rist mentioned that last night. Like if they're going to be market, he does not want to convey them for $1. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kayam, do you want to give us an update on the Housing Coalition?
Sure. So similarly to our like little celebration of a second ago, that's sort of how I think, at least I'm feeling, in regards to last night. So yeah, I think the first big thing that we've been focused on has passed, and in the last couple of meetings we've sort of thought about some other roles that the coalition can play. We thought about releasing op-eds, doing some short like mini docs. When we were talking about Zach, I think about he might be a good subject for like an interview or something. We definitely are going to continue to keep an eye on the RFP process and the school reuse process. But the mission statement has sort of been centered around education and destigmatizing low income and affordable housing. So that seems to be the thing that everyone's really agreed on and excited about. So I think that like seizing on that and using that as an organizing principle is the goal moving forward.
Awesome. I went to Chapa's Making the Case call last Monday, and I didn't stay the whole time because they were talking about MBTA communities, which we are not one of. But Lily had made these like affordable housing fact sheets for, I think she'd done it for like the town of Irving or something, like using Canva. They were really cool. And so I was hoping she was gonna email them out so that I could send them to you, Kayam, but I think they basically used like MHP's data, what's it called? Data Town to like get some data and just kind of like did some very town-specific fact sheets about affordable housing. So I'll send them to you. I'll ask her to send them to us because I think it would be cool for the Housing Coalition to take a look at it. They were like really graphic and brightly colored, like really nice. They looked really nice, and it might be something cool to try to recreate. So I was hoping she was going to circulate it, and she didn't. So I'll email her.
Well, that sounds really awesome, and exactly the sort of stuff that I think EHC is really well suited to start doing.
So can I just ask, I know I've asked Kyan this before, in terms of our participation with the coalition, how do we do that? You know, so as not to have too much of a representation. Like, I want to be supportive, but I don't want to be showing up if it's not helpful. You know, we're being part of things at a meeting if that's too many people from our committee. And I'm assuming that's the way it is for all of us to.
We have it's a quorum problem. So if more than if 3 of us are there and we're talking about the same things that we talk about here, then we're not supposed to do that.
Right.
So I'm not going to go to the coalition meetings anymore. I think because it's, 1, I talk too much, and 2, it's just like, I think what you did last time, which is like get updates from various folks and then share that with the coalition, is probably the best way to go forward. But so for Kate, for you and Shira, you both can't be there with Kayam. That's
Right.
the problem.
Right.
So we'll just have to communicate.
Yeah.
Maybe we alternate or something.
Yep.
And I do think that, and maybe this is a future meeting, like having a conversation about like how do we designate our activities, right? Like what are we going to work on that's different than the Housing Coalition, so we don't feel like we're all doing the same thing. And I do think like the documentaries and the op-eds and stuff could be like a Housing Coalition activity, and we could focus on other things.
I watched part of your video. It was so bad.
Remember the video that we made in like 2016?
Wow, look at that video.
Well, I think it was so funny because
It was great when it was at
the time it was great. We were like in the
Cutting edge.
we were in the studio.
1980s or something.
I think the person was in it was the guy sitting next to you actually last night.
Oh, really?
But what's so funny, because Max was talking about doing at the Housing Coalition meeting, like doing these like documentaries. And I was like, we did a video, and I'm like, but your documentary's gonna be way cooler than our video. But we were very proud of ourselves at that time.
It was really really good, high tech, and
It had a slightly different audience, perhaps, but yeah.
It's on Easthampton Media for.
It was.
Yeah.
It's posted right on our page on the off the planning department
I
page.
had to get up and find it.
It was hard to find for a while. I was glad it was there because I was trying to look for it, and I can never find anything on the Easthampton Media page. Like
Well,
literally,
it was on Vimeo.
Yes.
So like
Oh. So now it's on TikTok.
no, it's still on Vimeo because it was uploaded, but it's
We
just
used
actually
to
linked. So
It's exciting.
Anyway, but like maybe that's a future meeting discussion, is sort of figuring out like what are our different activities so that we're not overlapping.
Can I throw out an idea for maybe the coalition to think about in terms of a topic? Because it's something that we're talking a lot about at Valley, and I think often comes up is local preference requirements, and how that continues to perpetuate housing segregation. And we find that when we're in a 40B process, the local preference requirement always ends up in our permit, which requires us to have 70% of local, for the pool of applicants to be local, as defined under DHCD. And so if you're in a white community, a high white community, and you have local preference, how that just continues housing segregation.
Yes.
And the town of Newton, the city of Newton, recently, their housing partnership commissioned a planning study from their planning group to look at how lease-up worked in Newton with the local preference requirements, and the results were that it did in fact continue housing segregation.
Okay.
And so I'm just highlighting it as something to maybe think about.
Is that document public?
I found it through Boston Globe. So there's a Globe article about Newton and housing, their local preference, and how they were kind of tackling this issue because it's tied to systematic racism. And then I did find through their site the Barrett planning report. So Barrett Planning Group. Judy Barrett, she's a planner, and she works only in the housing planning world. I think she did the housing production plan,
Yeah, she
right?
did her housing production plan.
So anyway, I'm just flagging it as a topic to maybe think about, or as an advocacy item for, I think it seems like a good topic for the coalition to kind of take on. I know at Valley, our board is very concerned with local preference requirements on projects and is talking about pulling a policy together. There's even discussions of should we be walking away from projects that require us to have local preference? You know, is it, you know, like we're struggling with it ourselves because we rely so heavily on local support and local dollars to make our projects happen, that it's this sort of carrot and stick approach. But do we really want to be a part of the system that continues housing segregation when so much of what we're trying to do is house people that have a hard time getting housed? So anyway, I'm just flagging as a topic for you to maybe
It's already
think
come
about.
up, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You mostly see those in 40B projects. So, like where we've changed the zoning to allow multifamily by right in these districts or by site plan approval. Presumably, the school reuse wouldn't be subject to housing preferences.
although a committee could certainly, a committee, even though it's generally tied to 40B, I think.
Like the city council could
Yeah,
put that in
they
I
there.
think the city council needs to be educated a bit about that topic.
It came up at one of the property committee meetings.
Okay. I would guess that the current city council is about evenly split on the issue of having housing preferences.
I think when it's tied to money, that's where people start digging in. When it's tied to local dollars, they want to see it go to local people. And my comment has always been when somebody moves to Easthampton,
They're
are an
local.
Easthampton resident. So,
Right. So that's where it becomes this ball of confusion, right? Because like, if you don't live here, then how do you get to live here?
Right.
Like Zach is no longer an Easthampton resident,
right.
and now he's also excluded, or not excluded, but in the bottom 30% of the preferences. If 70 is the
There's something about like if you live or work or
in a
It's like
certain
live,
radius.
work, have kids that go to school. There's a fourth category, and I'm not remembering it right now. And the way that the pool is actually set is they look at the demographics of the region, and then the local pool has to match those racial demographics. So they actually will bring people into the pool to even it out. But even still, even with that sort of overlay, I'm educating myself about it more. You know, we are required to, we have permits that require it, and so we write marketing plans that have that as part of the lottery process. But it's becoming a little bit more of a topic that we're talking about at Valley. Other housers across the state are talking about. DHCD is looking, they're gonna start looking at their local preference policy and changing it because of this. And so, again, just a topic to kind of flag and think about.
In the old days, I used to, a long time ago, I used to review a lot of marketing plans, and towns would put in that you had to have been a resident for the last 12 months. Which is actually like against the law.
Right.
But that's what they would put in their permits, that you had to have been living in the community for at least 12 months. So you couldn't, because the idea was people would move there just so they could be in the lottery. It's like, God. And that's against the law, they can't do that. But that's what they used to do.
It's almost like a little bit like the old pre-existing condition thing,
Yeah.
like that you're just in a bind. It's like you have to change the law, that it's kind of a similar thing.
Yeah.
Anywho, just flagging it as a topic.
Yeah, I think it'll
No,
come
that's great.
up.
Thank you.
So I think it'll be
Yeah,
good.
and I mean, like Kate said, it already has come up in the property committee meeting. It came up at the first housing coalition, like exploratory, like the initial meeting. That was a conversation that was had, and there was a back and forth about like, I think it was older residents that were I think I don't think it was coming from the place of being like having a segregation mindset, but it was very much like all of my friends have to move out because, you know, there's no housing for aging residents, and like, let's make sure that those people can stay in the town before we have new people come in. But then, like, yeah, the other point of view of like, Easthampton is 95% white, and, you know, we need to really reckon with that, and how our policy choices can exacerbate that or perpetuate that. So
you say that there's been some permitting that requires a certain amount of local preference requirements. Is that the right phrasing? What about other preference requirements like age or
Disabilities.
yeah?
So depending on the funding source, so for projects that, like for example, we're building a 28-unit project in Amherst.
Okay.
There's 2 units that are set aside for Department of Mental Health patients, so there's a very specific lottery process for that.
Mhm.
The ADA units have a very specific lottery pool for those individuals. And there are other racial qualifications, and Jana's looked at enough marketing plans and she can probably speak to this as well. But there are certain, you know, the lottery is set up in a very certain way.
So who typically sets these?
The city.
The city.
Yeah.
The city.
So depending on like who's the permitting agent, but if it's a 40B, it goes to the zoning board.
Okay,
If it's
got
something
it.
else, it could be the planning board. So that's usually when these things, they come up and then they want them as a requirement.
So these are
And
the
then-
next things we need to press
And
upon the
DHCD
council. Okay.
kind of sets the limit, like you can't have 100% local
70%
preference.
is the highest.
Yeah.
And I think there was a local preference requirement for either 50 Cottage or Parsons.
I mean, it's kind of, like, I think in some ways it's become standard. Like, people
Right.
don't blink when they say there's a 70% local preference. But I think that's
But we need to push.
but that's where we really need to start thinking about, like, what does that really mean? What happens?
And that's just
Chapman
on
had a
the,
regional meeting today.
Oh, yeah, I know, I missed it.
So one of the things that the policy, the long list of policy things that they talked about is lowering the percentage for local preference requirement in exclusionary communities, which I'm like, well, how's that defined?
Right.
So what does that mean? But that, again, it's like, you know, on their hit list of policies that they're kind of starting to
At the
poke
state
at.
level?
Yeah, CHAPA is, Jan can speak about CHAPA. She went there.
I just missed that you said chap.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Statewide advocacy, yeah.
Anywho, I don't mean to derail your meeting. I just want to throw it out there.
That's why we like having you. No, I think it's great. I think it's a great thing for the coalition to think about again as we think about messaging and education mostly. Yeah. Anything else, Kyan, you want to share? I'm looking at you like, I don't know if you can even see me. I don't know what you can see, but like, I feel compelled to look at the screen because looking at the owl is weird.
well, right now I see you, Shira, and Jessica on the bottom, and then on the top it's like a 360 view of everyone. So, but like the bottom three keeps like swiping around depending on who's talking. It's very interesting.
Oh no, I don't want to see it. So,
It looks like the Brady Bunch, like the theme song.
can't.
So we should talk to the owl?
I guess we're supposed to talk to the owl.
it focuses on you as you speak. So it said something and now it looks at me.
It's so weird. All right. If we're ready to move on, we could talk about, this came up, I don't remember, earlier in the summer, and I sort of forgot about it. But we had talked about sending a memo to the mayor about 75 Oliver Street, also known as Town Lodging, to remind her that we care about this property and we would like to be updated about what's going on, basically. And that we know that, you know, I think that we know that she's working on something, but I think this is just kind of putting in writing that we also care about this and we would love to support it and would also love to have any updates she would like to share with us.
It's good.
So if you have edits that you would like to send to me, if there's anything I missed, I was supposed to do this months ago, apologize.
So just for the update of like where we're at. Planning department's been working with Valley.
I kind of
Jessica.
knew that. I also, this is like the thing you were never going to let fail is town launching out.
It actually pans out.
But it's progressing.
Okay.
So I don't know right now. I mean, I think it's still a good thing to send to the mayor and show the support that the House Partnership supports this. And,
Okay.
but right now it's sort of fallen back in the planning department,
Okay.
at least until the next sort of decision-making process.
We're in the middle of due diligence.
Okay. Great.
We're seeing if anything's feasible there. So, we have a historic consultant, we're getting an archaeologist out there.
Ooh.
So
Sounds
we have to see if the units work.
challenging.
Yeah, it's no joke. I mean,
Yeah.
I think from our perspective, again, what's challenging about the site is its location.
Yeah.
It's way out there, and there's no bus.
Yeah.
So that
Oh, that's the one that's kind of.
that to us is kind of
I've looked at the birds.
the
It's-
million-dollar question is, does it make sense to house people in a location that's super remote?
And will the state fund it?
And adding more.
Yeah.
So, we're
Okay.
thinking.
Well, does anyone have any comments about the memo, or does it look okay?
That's okay.
Okay, then I will send it. I promise. All right. Anything else? Folks, any advocacy updates? Anything else that has come up?
I wanted to ask about the rental assistance and if there's been any progress on that.
I can.
Time for fantasy football.
Sorry. Better get your lineup in. What's my password here? I can share. I don't think I did this last time. I can share the report that I sent to CPA if folks are interested in hearing about like what like the final numbers for the rental assistance program. One thing we talked about last time was that community action could decide to apply to CPA directly if we wanted more money for homelessness prevention, which we have not done or even talked about, but I think could be a possibility. But let me pull up my final report that I sent to Jamie.
Well, I think I remember you had told us like the amount of people that the program affected and like how much money was spent versus but I guess my biggest question was just if there was anything that this committee can do to help facilitate that CPA money request.
Well, I think if we decide to apply, sorry, my stupid computer thinks I'm trying to hack into my own account. Wants me to validate myself. Multi-factor authentication is such a pain. So I think I've shared this last time, but what's happening on the statewide level is that DHCD, who does lots of things, including fund lots of different housing programs, has really taken a shift away from funding prevention and is focusing a lot of their money on funding for people who are literally homeless, which is needed. And also, it's actually better to keep people housed where they are before they actually become homeless. And so there is been several sources of funding that Community Action has had for many years that we have used for prevention that is gone. And we will not be able to use it for prevention. We have to use it basically to help people after they're already homeless. So, which is incredibly short-sighted in my opinion on behalf of the state, but that is what's happening. And so we've been thinking about how we're going to shift our work to be able to use those funds because we still need them, but then also figuring out how we might still be able to have money for prevention. The Easthampton program was very successful. we still get calls actually from Easthampton residents who are looking for the funds. I cannot get anything to open here, but here it is. We spent $219,785 and helped 76 households. 25% of the people served were kids, 31% were disabled, 19% were Hispanic and Latino, which I'm sure is higher than like our general demographic of residents in the city.
So 19% of the people who received assistance. Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's like 90% white, and then like 10% is like not white, which also includes people of two or more races.
Yeah, biracial is
It's 25% were single parents. So I think we may decide to apply to, it could be like Easthampton, Northampton, Amherst potentially, just to see if we can cobble together a little bit more of prevention. So if we decide to do that, then I would certainly notify the Housing Partnership if the Housing Partnership wanted to support the application. I just haven't gotten my act together to actually like do that. We're still waiting on a few funding sources to figure out what might be available to us, but yeah, so that's my sort of non-update. If that helps.
when you say you mean at your job.
Yeah, so yes, so right.
Okay.
So it would be me at my job who would help to do the CPA application, which obviously means I would recuse myself from anything that the Housing Partnership decided. Similarly, when Community Action applied for the emergency rental assistance contract, I recused myself from any conversations that the Housing Partnership
But we
had.
can still have them.
Yes.
use them.
Yes, just without me.
So you said it was like not prevention. What was the word you used? That was
Diversion.
diversion.
That's what the state is pivoting toward, is both like, so we've had this one contract since 2002 that basically did prevention, and they have taken all of that money, that's federal money, and moved it into their individual sheltering system. So basically to help homeless individuals, which is a necessary thing. However, they have really like made a decision on the agency's, on the state's behalf to like take these resources and make them very specifically for one group of people.
So diversion is to divert people from living like on the streets, let's say, and diverting them to shelters?
Well, or
once they're in the shelter to help them
move out of the shelter. There's two things. There's one is in the individual sheltering system, making all this money available to help folks who are homeless in various ways, like shelter, day shelter, rapid rehousing. It's basically like quickly getting them out of shelter into an apartment. And then they're also using some of their other funds for diversion, which means so in Massachusetts, we are one of the only states that has a right to shelter for families. So in Massachusetts, if you are a family with children or you're pregnant, you have a right to shelter, meaning that you have a right, we have a sheltering system for families. We don't have that for individuals. So individuals, sometimes live outside. You don't see a lot of families with children like living outside because we have a family shelter system, which still has a lot of criteria and not everybody is approved. But the idea is that you apply because you meet some criteria. You're either literally homeless, about to be homeless, sleeping in a place that's not fit for human habitation, like the emergency room or the police department or a barn. And then you can either go into the family shelter system, or sometimes you can get diverted. Like if you said, oh, well, I could go live with my aunt in Texas, and you just need money to get on the bus and go to Texas. Or I am about to be evicted, but I could stay in this place for another couple months. Okay, we'll give you money to stay in that place, and then we'll help you look for another apartment. And so that's what the state is moving more toward, is diversion, instead of helping the people just stay. I mean, they also have raft.
It's a million times harder once somebody's in a shelter. It's just, it's the amount of work
And the trauma to the family and the children to like become homeless.
So
And
that diversion is mostly for the family, like families, or
There's-
is it,
yeah, it's
or is it
part of-
individuals too?
it's both. It's part of their new, like they re-procured the family shelter system a couple years ago, and those contracts just started, and there's a new diversion component. And then if for individuals, it seems more like rapid rehousing, like you get into the shelter and then you quickly move them into an apartment. The ironic part is that there's no apartments, and so you can't
With apartments.
rapidly rehouse someone when there's no place to go.
Right.
And then they still have RAFT, which is the statewide, like, big prevention program. So RAFT still exists. And there's very specific RAFT providers, which there's 9, I think, in the state. But from my personal perspective, like, RAFT doesn't always solve the problem. So that's great if you can get RAFT, but a lot of people still also need another source, like they owe more. And so Community Action has always been successful, like collaborating with RAFT, and so now we're losing that ability because the state has decided that RAFT is apparently all anyone needs. It's just, to stay in their
Wayfinders
apartment.
is one of the providers, right? So
Wayfinders and Franklin County Regional in our
a
area.
good friend of mine has just become homeless. I mean, she has a place to stay, but she has just lost her apartment because she couldn't afford her rent on time, and she was already getting assistance from Wayfinders, but it was RAFT. And so when she asked for more assistance, they wouldn't give it to her because RAFT should be enough. So yeah.
What if somebody is homeless in the sense that they're couch surfing? Is that considered homeless? Like they're not in a shelter, they're
This is like still new to me because we don't do this work as enough. I think it depends like how long they can stay couch surfing.
or car sleeping.
Car sleeping would qualify because that's not like a place that's fit for human habitation. Like you're not supposed to sleep in your car. But if you're couch surfing and like it just depends like how long. Like if you're couch surfing and you're putting somebody else's housing at risk. So if you're couch surfing on your sister's couch who lives in public housing, like you can't stay there.
Right.
Like your sister's gonna get in trouble. So that might make you eligible. Whereas if you're couch surfing at your aunt's house and your aunt doesn't care, that might not make, it's a little bit, I don't know all the nuances. It's
nobody's,
complicated.
like, homeless in the same way.
Right.
It's such
Right.
a complicated
Right.
state of being.
But she's not couch surfing, she's living with some friends in a spot in Goshen. But they don't want her to live there permanently, so
Right.
she's couch surfing, but it's just on the same couch.
Right.
We have a marketing plan for East Gables. We have 10 units that are for homeless preference. And we had a very long definition of what
Homeless.
defines a homeless individual. And the couch surfing was in there somehow. I can't remember the.
I think it's like doubled up.
But it was like for a very specific period of time, I think, like 3 months of, I can't remember. But I remember, because I was writing this marketing plan and going through it, and I remember, I'd have to pull it back out again. But we had a very specific definition of, for those homeless units, what's the preference criteria and how is somebody defined to be able to get into those units, so.
Sometimes too, it depends on the size of the unit. So if there's too many of you in a unit that's too small,
Right.
then sometimes that also helps you qualify because there's 6 of you in a studio apartment. Like you're considered underhoused, and so then you would need services. So. So that was a very long-winded answer. Sorry, Kyan.
No, it's very informative though.
It's tricky.
Yeah, no, thank you. That was helpful.
Any other things on the horizon? Can't think of anything else. Okay. Our next meeting will be October 27th at 6 p.m. And we'll do it hybrid. But only one member can be hybrid, can be remote, so just keep that in mind.
We'll draw straws.
Actually, I would, if it's advertised.
Oh, it's advertised?
If it's like, then we're in the like, anybody can be,
But somebody has to be here.
someone has to be here.
All right, I'll be here.
I'll be here unless I have COVID. I'm not planning to I just got this.
Yeah, I prefer to be in person. So.
Okay.
Um,
Our November meeting is scheduled for Thanksgiving. Pretty sure we need to reschedule. So it is scheduled for November. This happens to us
Every year.
every single year because Thanksgiving is on the fourth
On a
Thursday.
Thursday, this is like the fourth year in a row.
So we could meet the week before on November 17th, if that worked for people.
That's fine with me.
The 17th works for me.
The 17th is the CPA meeting in this room.
Oh.
At the same time
That you have to be at.
that I will be at and Jessica will be at. But
Okay. So not the 17th.
could we do a different night of the week, or does it need to be a Thursday?
It doesn't need to be a Thursday as long as we can find a room.
Okay.
I can ask Barbara what's available that week, if you want me to,
The week
of the 14th. Do you have any other meetings that night, Jamie?
14th would be fine. The 15th would be fine. The 21st would be fine. The 22nd would be
Okay.
fine. The 10th would be fine. So like, there's lots of options. It's just the 17th.
Just the 17th. Okay.
The week of Thanksgiving is not.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably not.
It's
Great.
hard.
Okay. I'll look for the 11th. I'll ask Barbara about the 14th or 15th. And then in December, it's December 29th, which I feel like would not be my preference. School vacation week.
I have it as the 22nd
Oh, you're right.
because there's 5 Thursdays. in
I forgot that was, right. So is the 22nd still, is that still okay? December 22nd? Okay. Right before Christmas? Okay.
It says Hanukkah 5 candles. The Hebrew calendar. Hanukkah 5 candles.
Great.
Thursday, December 22nd.
Okay. Then I think
The 22nd of Kislev, just like they were.
we can adjourn. Does that sound okay?
Jamie might get that joke.
It's 7:15. And we are adjourning, and I'm gonna go try this.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.